Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1466 of the Locked on Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, and it is early May at this point. It's the offseason officially. The Hawks have been done playing for a couple of days and weeks now at this stage, and it's really time to check in with one of our favorite guests. I would call him a friend of the podcast and a fan favorite at the highest level, and that is Tyler Jones. Always entertaining to talk to Tyler, and we have fun conversations back and forth. It's actually going to be part one of a two-part episode with Tyler, kind of kicking off the offseason with a look back at what happened at the end of the season and really all season long, as well as where the Hawks are as a franchise and what the next steps might be, all that fun stuff. So please stay tuned for part two as well. But without further delay, you'll hear the intro. I'll be back with Tyler Jones, friend of the podcast, and a lot of fun.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I am joined once again by my friend Tyler Jones, fan favorite, friend of the podcast. I always say this, but by far the most requested guest on this podcast. Eat your heart out, Glenn Willis. Tyler Jones is back. Hello, sir. How are you?
How are the Falcons, Brad? I see somebody's excited. Somebody is excited for Bijan's season.
Listen, I didn't plan to wear this. If you're watching, not I'm watching YouTube, I'm wearing a Falcons hoodie, and I do always say this. They are the team, the Atlanta sports team that I have never covered. So I am certainly the most kind of normal fan, like with the Falcons. And yeah, I mean, I kind of made fun of myself about it, and I promise we'll talk about Hawks in a second. But I didn't really want them to take Bijan, and I did say immediately that as soon as they took him, I'm in, baby. Number 7 jersey on the way. We're ready to go. Let's rock and roll here. Bijan season, baby. Let's do this thing.
It's Bijan. That's the thing, Brad. Like that. We all knew they were taking Bijan. Like I've never known.
We did know. We did know.
I've never known Arthur Blank to not take the sexy skill player. Like if he was there, like
and then you throw in Arthur Smith too.
Arthur Smith, of course.
He of the running back. Oh yeah, we're ready to rock you. No, I'm just a fan of the Falcons. I'm not an expert by any means, but I do know some people that know things. And I texted people that morning, and everybody was like, "They're taking Bijan." Like it was not even like I honestly should have profited on it. I couldn't bet on it, but I should have. It would have been.
Didn't even need sources. I should have bet on it because I was like, "They're taking." Well, I'm pretty sure the odds were bad because everybody knew what was happening.
Everybody knew by then. Yes, that's 100% true. And we're on brand with Falcons talk here in early May, but. I purposely wanted to have everybody simmer down a little bit. It's been a week plus since the season ended. I know there's always a take out there by everybody, and people got them off, and we're gonna have plenty more time for that. The draft is like 7 weeks away, and I did some draft stuff already. I already posted a podcast with Brian Schroeder about the 15th pick. We're here, but I want to look a little bit backwards, a little bit forward. I'll just ask you this. How are you feeling now? And is it any different than you were feeling like maybe the day after the season ended last Friday? Have you settled in at all?
No, I feel about the same, which is better. I mean, after the playoff series, I felt better about the Hawks' future.
Yeah.
I mean, because you had to, because you watched them for 6 games, and like really for the last 3. You saw what they were capable, or maybe in the last 4, you really saw what they were capable of when they're locked in and focused. And it's like, the good thing, the exciting thing about the Hawks is it's not a talent issue. They have pieces that they're missing. There are holes in this roster that need to be filled. And there's like just individual execution that needs to like a more because I mean even the Celtics were talking about this after the series over. They're like, it was a tough series. They gave the Hawks a lot of credit, but they also said like the difference was we just out executed them, like just flat out. Like they were on their P's and Q's, and the Hawks, like to me, they're still a young team and they still struggle. They still struggle with defending as a team. Like that was their biggest weak. That even more than point of attack defense was just team defense where everybody's on a string, and you kind of saw them get there around game 5 and game 6. Like you really saw them actually get to that point. But by that point, your game 6 ended the way it did. It just came down to individual shot making. And it's
right.
like, if you play that level of defense from game 1, which if you're a better basketball team, or if you have a first round series to buffer you from the Celtics, you wouldn't have to worry about, you could clean up some of the stuff in that first round series against a less talented team. Because Hawks probably played the best teams in the NBA still going right now. So, there's no shame in losing the 6 to the Celtics, but I do feel like it was a missed opportunity because like both on a talent perspective and also for a matchup perspective, like the Hawks matched up pretty well, like just guy to guy, and like Trey Young was electric. So it was a fun series, but it also feels like a missed opportunity. If they were more solid in the 82 game season, they have a really good chance of winning the NBA championship right now. I mean, that's just reality, and it's like it's not talent, it's not one player. But it's the harder thing that it's like we got to gel as a team. We really got to lock in, and so hopefully they do that.
Yeah, this being a super wide open season in general makes it almost more frustrating. I said this on the radio the other day. It was because I got asked an interesting question. It was like, basically, you kind of see what you want to see with this Hawks team right now. Like if you go back to where you and I were, let's say in September, October, they obviously underachieved that. They won 41-41 without any major injuries. That's not a good season. I think almost everyone agrees on that, at least. But then you also get into the fact that, like, if you ask me again in, let's say, mid-March, even this is post-Quin, are they going to push the Celtics, like legitimately push the Celtics in the first round after beating the Heat on the road in the play-in? That would have felt like a pretty good outcome in February, March, April. So it's like whatever you want to see, you can kind of see it. And you're right. I mean, it's obviously a different world and we don't live in this world, but like it felt kind of like to me a second round series between a 1 seed and a 4-5 seed. That's kind of what it felt like to me with the Hawks playing the way they did. Now, I'm not saying they didn't earn that. The Hawks didn't earn that. They did not play at that level all season long. I mean, I'm the first to say that. I covered every game all year long. They just weren't that good, and it was frustrating in a lot of ways. I'm sure you were even more frustrated than I am because you're more in it than I am in some ways. But it's like the way that feel. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned what Boston said, because I took note of that too. Like, Jaylen Brown is from here, so maybe he's a little bit more like eager to give some more love.
Well,
to
I mean,
the Hawks.
Unlike the other guy from Atlanta, supposedly.
Yeah, unlike
Jaylen
is not popular anymore.
Jaylen's actually a fan of the team.
Well, I would just say that because Jaylen, I think he got the most attention for the positive things he said about the Hawks, but he was not the only one. Their staff is very complimentary. I mean, even this is it doesn't really matter, but like even people that I know, like that are media type people, were like impressed by the Hawks. Like John Corrales, the guy who hosts Locked On Celtics, good guy. Jay King covers them for The Athletic. They were like, man, the Hawks, like, I talked to Jay at Game 6 in person. He was like, this Hawks has been pretty impressive in the series. I'm like, yeah, this is what they could be if they play the way they could play. And that doesn't mean that they're going to be like just running it back. And we'll talk about that in a second. But it is one of those things where, like, I know it just sounds funny. I'm sure, like, if you're a first time listener or whatever, maybe you're more pessimistic. I get it, but you can see what you want to see with this team. And on one hand, is what you just said, like, if you choose to see it, it was there for you to see, like, all right, this is a really interesting and good basketball team with a new coach. They have depth. Granted, they were 100% healthy in the playoffs. That was very helpful too. But I mean, you can see that, or you can choose to focus, and this wouldn't be the craziest thing either, on the fact that they were 41-41 and like famously mid, like hilariously mid during the season. So it really is kind of an eye of the beholder situation. And it's funny after 88 games to, like, we're still in the, like, you can see what you want to see mode, but that really is kind of where we are. Today's show is brought to you by eBay Motors, and for a championship team, it's all about making sure that every single player is a perfect fit for your roster. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part has to fit just right. So next time you're looking for parts or accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay's guaranteed fit, you can be sure that every single part that you need fits right and does so the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage, look for the green check. Another part will be fitting for you or your money back. But just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when it comes to shopping at eBay Motors. With over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in absolutely no time. After all, it's really easy to bring home a win when your parts are actually guaranteed and right for you. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices at ebaymotors.com. One more time, that is ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
I mean, it speaks largely to the talent of Trey Young. You know, I think a lot of that kind of comes down to him. And I think what was great about this postseason and the last, because Trey had some real struggles to end the year. So it was great to see him, you know, remember that nobody can actually guard him when he's like the thing about Trey that gets lost, because there's a lot of hoopla from a whole lot of different people. People don't like the way he plays, all this good stuff. What gets lost is he's probably the best, like, if you want to talk about on-ball creation, he's probably the best in the NBA in terms of you put him on the floor, regardless of the other four guys, you're guaranteed at least a 1.15 points per possession. You know, to cook the Celtics defense the way he did. Like, the Celtics are a great defense, and Trey treated them like they were the Hornets or or like one of the worst teams in the NBA. Like, just destroyed them.
Once he found it, like, it was, the light was on, and in some ways, I mean, this is not trying to be negative, but like, it's what didn't happen in the Miami series last year, which is why it was so weird, because it was like, wait, he's always good. And he just wasn't in that. And it was just gone. And then, games 1 and 2, I do think that he was better even in games 1 and 2 of this series than he was against Miami last year. He was more engaged, but like, everybody see, I guess I got lucky with the timing, but that the athletic thing that came out with him being the most overrated player in the league, all this stuff. And I was like, guys, if anything, and I said this, if anything, he's underrated, and I thought that for a while. And that's not to say that, like, I'm not a Trey stan. It is what it is. Like, he's got his flaws, but the guy is. I really think, because of all the hoopla around Trey, and some of the more ridiculous takes from people that have very large followings, we'll say, like, I think he actually is underrated at this point, because, like, yeah, it's hard to build around a guy who's 6'1". No, I get it. I mean, but, like, he's really good, man. Like, he's really, really good at what he does. He really is.
The thing with Trey is that you can't look at him as an individual. Like, you can't look at his individual statistics. They're great. They don't and they measure up to the best players in the NBA, but that doesn't really show his impact on the game.
He could also play bad and have 30 and 10. I've seen him do it many times. He can not play well and have 28 and 11.
Like, to me, his individual scoring and like his assists and like his the traditional stats or even some of the advanced metrics, I don't think really capture like just his ability to always, every possession, to generate a great shot for somebody, either for himself, like an open shot, like just to generate an open shot for himself or for other people. Like, I feel like we're not there yet as NBA watchers. Like, this is I mean, I hate to say it, like, if you watch soccer, he plays like a typical number 10. Like, that's what he is. Like, he's just a creator. Like, he's a creator first that can score for himself, but like just the ability to just consistently get guys easy looks at the rim and at three, wide open looks, like that's not easy to do. The Bucks flamed out against the Miami Heat because they can't run basic pick and roll, and they cannot generate easy looks at the rim without it, unless if it's not Giannis bowling into the front of the rim, they have no plan B. The Golden State Warriors, if Steph Curry isn't dribble driving into the rim to the paint, they have nobody who can provide rim pressure. Nobody. Yep. Like we saw, like, if you watched the game last night with the Lakers, until Steph Curry was basically playing point guard, the Warriors were stuck in the mud. Like it was just a bunch of contested 3-point looks that the Lakers were like, sure, you can have that. Meanwhile, we're just going to take it to the rim every possession. I mean, it's so hard, especially in the playoffs where all these teams are good. every team you play in the playoffs is going to be good, and especially in this NBA where there's over 20 plus teams that with, I think, either even point differential or positive point differential. Like every game's a struggle. Every game's a struggle now in the NBA. And Trey Young makes it look easy. Like Trey makes it look so easy. It's not that, like, guys, it is not easy what Trey does on the ball as a creator. I wish, and it's also what's frustrating about him, because what we saw against the Celtics, what we saw in 2021 playoff series, where it's like, okay, if you can put the surrounding pieces around him where they can get some stops, the Hawks can win a title with this dude. Like and so it's good to see, like, to me, more than anything else, it's good to see Trey reestablish himself as one of the best players in the NBA. Like, full stop. Like that, regardless of what the outside people think, like, just from my perspective, because he was really teetering towards the end of the year, plus what the playoff series, plus all the stuff that happened this season. It's good to see him get his confidence back and play that way.
Yeah, and also, I think you could be accurate and talk about how well he played in 2021, because he did. He played great, and I kind of made the joke last year that kind of thank God for from a narrative perspective. Thank God he played well the year before, because he was so bad last year in the series that the takes would have been just absolutely insufferable had he not had the year before. Because the year before, and they were bad enough anyway. You know what I mean? But if he hadn't had it already, it played at every stereotype of, oh, you can't win this guy in the playoffs, all this stuff. And he had already done it. So it was good. And now this year he does it again. And I think, yeah, he wasn't great in the first two games. And yeah, there'll be nights where, you all talked about it. We watched every single minute of the season. Like, there are times when Trey didn't seem to have confidence in his jump shot this year. Like, it kind of waxed. He stopped taking jump shots. And that's when he's not even like he's on fire, but when he's confident enough in his jumper where he will take it, and he'll take 8 threes and 10 threes or whatever in a game, everything else opens up. Yeah. And he's not oblivious to everybody. Nobody is, to be fair, but it's also easier for him, especially as a smaller guy, when he has space around him. And we've seen, like, his worst moments a lot of the time is when they're playing with lineups that don't have spacing, and he can overcome that when he's really feeling it. When he's not, it's harder, and that's very normal for everybody. So, we can talk about Trey forever. I feel like that was a really positive step. And look, it's 6 games, or you might even say 4 games. But the fact that he was able to do that, and they were able to make that run, this doesn't matter to me, but I'm sure it matters to some people. It also seemed to immediately quiet the whispers about, like, the trade stuff and all that. I mean, I didn't even want to deal with it all when it happened, but I talked about it like once or twice. I don't want to do it again, but, like, it did seem like the temperature was just turned down a little bit, and he seems to be all in on Quin, which is great. I mean, and Trey, to his credit, has gotten a lot better just with the way he talks in the media. And like, he's been a lot better. This is a normal progression for a guy who's a star, a young guy. But as someone who's covered literally every minute of his career to this point, he doesn't say the things he says about Quin Snyder on accident. I think that Trey, and by the way, Trey does not, and you can say how this is a good thing or a bad thing, Trey does not always give the quote you're supposed to give. You know what I mean? He doesn't have that gene where he always says the right thing, which is a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's mostly a good thing. It's kind of just who he is. But, like, some guys, I'm sure you can agree with this. You watch this stuff too. Some guys will say what they're supposed to say.
The political
almost always. You know what I mean? Maybe not always, but almost always. And everyone was positive about Quin. It wasn't Trey. But I found it even more stark that Trey was so effusive about Quin. He's not that way normally. And maybe that was intentional, or maybe it wasn't, or maybe he's just excited. He seems to be pretty excited about it, which is, I think, that matters a lot. I mean, he's just one guy, but look, he's got to be the culture setter. And it's been a knock on him. At least one of the knocks on him is that he's not a culture setter. He's not a guy that's like this galvanizing force off the court. And I'm not sure he's ever going to be like Tim Duncan. He's not going to be that guy, I don't think. But for him to be like feeling it that way and like, all right, man, let's get going. Let's get in the gym. And this is our guy. Like, kind of point to Quin, like, this is our guy. That stuff matters to me. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp, and when you're at your best, you can do absolutely great things. Sometimes that can get you bogged down. I know I've been there before in my own right, and life, you might feel overwhelmed, honestly. And if your maybe is not showing up in the way that you want to or that you need to for the folks around you, if it sounds like you at all, or if you're looking to give therapy a try in any way, BetterHelp is a great option for you. It's convenient, it's flexible, it's affordable, and it's entirely online. And really, I know a lot of people that have been benefiting from BetterHelp across the board. And it's really telling to me that they've been kind of looking for different things. It's still benefiting very differently and positively from the work of BetterHelp. Fill out a brief questionnaire right now to get matched with your licensed therapist. If you need to switch therapists anytime, you can do so with no additional charge. If you want to live a more empowered life, therapy can help you get there. And you can visit betterhelp.com/lockedon right now to get 10% off on your first month with BetterHelp. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon.
You brought up two great points. I want to elaborate a little bit. As somebody who watched the Jazz before the season, watched Quin and his demeanor, I will say this. Quin, when he took the job, was very relaxed. And so, like, and I just want to point this out to people.
I think he had to be, too.
I mean, he had to be because, I think this is to Quin's credit as a coach. I think he understood more than anybody else that he had to turn the heat down. It got way too hot, like too much pressure on all these guys because they were underperforming. Quin comes in and at a weird time, post All-Star break, no practices, and I feel like his main role was this teaching and like being complimentary and being effusive to all these guys because Quin's a basketball lifer. He knows the talent on this roster is good enough, but like I feel like he understood when he took the job. These guys' confidence that they're not confident that this is working, and they don't know why. And so I feel like Quin really did a great job of communicating and keeping the pressure off of everybody. And even just for the fact that they didn't push, when he took the job, they weren't pushing to win every game. Boki went from playing back-to-backs in 38 minutes a night and running him into the dirt to he plays 20 minutes. And after 20 minutes, he's done for the day. So, because we got to see these other guys and experimenting with Jalen as a defender, getting Jalen involved more, to me, it was a refreshing role to see a guy who's so experienced and who's been in the pressure cooker and understands that, the NBA is a results-based league. People talk about the process. Nobody cares. And everybody understands. If you're not winning, the process goes out the door because the man who writes the checks is going to be like, hey, this not working. So I'm firing X amount of people. We're trading everybody. That's what they did. That's what they did last season.
Well, you're 100% right. And it's also why I think Quin, to your point, took advantage of the fact that he knew he was going to have at least a half season honeymoon period. He came in with a 5-year contract for a bunch of money on a 500 team. And there was not a whole lot he could do in that 2.5, 3 months to be under any pressure himself. You know what I mean? He just signed, this year, maybe the clock starts or whatever, but I think he did know that was part of his approach. Look, he's got his assistants are not guys he knows. And he was really positive about those guys and really complimentary of those guys, but it's just the whole thing was so weird. And I think he knew, again, like you said, to kind of turn it down and not look. And we're not. I know you're not saying this, and I'm not either. That they're obviously trying to win. They're trying to win games by the playoffs. He's treating like everybody. Guys who play 40 minutes. They were pushing by the time they got in the playoffs. No question about that. But it wasn't a misunderstanding of where they were. I think he kind of knew what he was getting into, and you build relationships, and he was consistent about that. You build habits, and he even said at no point did he say we weren't trying to win a game. Obviously, but it was a lot of messaging, even through the media, which you can argue how much that matters. But it was all about habits and culture setting and all these things. And yeah, that's stuff that everybody says. But even after losses, he'd come in there after a loss that was a frustrating loss, and he'll express that frustration, but he'll also say but we got to do this, this, and this, and this guy, this guy, this guy, and yeah, is it easier because he just got there? Sure it is, but that stuff is probably helpful, especially when you've just been grinding and not to go back to 21 where they made the run, but that raised the bar for everybody and it put the pressure cooker on everybody. And ownership on down. And Tony's not fooling around, man. Like these guys are. We'll talk about it later on in this conversation, I'm sure. Like what they're going to do going into next year, but spoiler alert, they're not going to run it back. I don't think
they're definitely not running it back.
So I think they all know that. But Quin got this like very weird opportunity, but also a rare one that I think he understood in a positive way to just like not only just like operate in this strange ecosystem, but also just like evaluate guys and build relationships. And like it's this weird thing where you can debate how much power he's going to have in the front office. My answer is some. I don't know how much yet, but some for sure. But he now got to coach these guys for 2.5 months. And that's a lot more information than you and I are ever going to have about these players. It's crazy as that sounds. Like I've watched literally every minute of Trey Young's career. Quin knows more about Trey Young right now after 2 months. I can tell you that right now. Like these guys, that's just invaluable. And I'm sure they'll talk about that a lot. I'm sure Landry will talk about it too. But I found that striking too. Like it's just it's a weird situation. I feel like I've said that 100 times, but it really is like almost unprecedented.
But a good one. I feel like
but a good one. No,
one.
I'm with you. It worked out very well for them, I think.
Yeah, I think it was. I think if to give this management group some credit here, I think even they understood. I think everybody after a certain point understood. We have simply put too much pressure on literally everyone top down in this organization. Like we have like demanded stuff that they're not ready. Like we've demanded stuff, but we haven't, avoiding the tax and all that good stuff. Like it's one of those things where I feel very strongly that they were like, all right, this is a mea culpa. So we're going to go out and hire the best coach. And we're going to be like, hey, we'd like to make the playoffs. We still expect to make the playoffs, but like, do what we want you guys to do to have fun coming into work. Like, we want you guys to at least, like, not even maybe have fun playing the games, but just like, not let it be such a grind. It was so like, it felt like the Nate McMillan, the year all the way till he got fired. And I don't even think this is all Nate's fault. Truthfully, I don't even think a lot of this wasn't even Nate's fault. It just felt like so much pressure that everybody was just grinding for every win, and everybody's like just super tense.
It was organizational. To your point, it was organizational, but also Nate. And look, I was not one of the like pitchfork guys with Nate. I don't think he's a great coach, but I don't think he was as bad as everybody thinks he is. But to that particular point you just made, Nate's approach is the worst thing for that because Nate is a grinder and he knows it. Yeah. Everybody knows it about Nate. Nate thinks about the next game. that's maybe a little bit over the top, but I really do mean like he's the epitome of like we are trying to win the next basketball game on our schedule, and that can put a lot of like emphasis on things, and it can be not the greatest situation.
And like I want to give Nate some credit here. I do think, I really do think after the Trey situation that happened early in the season, with him thinking he got sent home, mm-hmm. I really think Nate did a pretty good job of getting these guys to operate as a unit, even if they don't like what's happening, don't like the offense, even like to be professional and to like have empathy for each other and like really like I think he got Trey. I really do think he got Trey in line in a way that he hadn't been throughout for the last year or so. Like he got Trey back in line to being more team operating and like not see so many enemies and stuff like that. Like I really feel like they did a good job of cutting out the noise because there was so much noise. And unfortunately the offseason is coming up. So
yeah, I was gonna say
about to start back up again.
It's been a lot of noise, and it still will be. I mean, we'll just to wrap up this part, and then we'll talk about the offseason. I think that it goes to what you said earlier about the way you're feeling after this series is concerned, because it's easier. And again, I say this as someone who is not the most anti-Nate person in the world. I think it's really encouraging. I've heard it from fans. I'm sure you have the same thought, or you've heard it from other people, like just to have Snyder and like have this guy that I think is a top 10 coach. I said as much before they even started interviewing him. He was the guy I wanted them to hire immediately. He was like, if they can get Snyder, they should hire him. And they did. And I don't know if I'm going to be right about that. We'll see. They seem to like him right now. But just having, especially with a front office that is so green, they have no experience in the front office. And I'm not saying that they're going to do a bad job. I don't know Landry that well yet. I love Kyle Korver. I mean, I really do. I covered him as a player. He has like 100% approval rating from like everyone basically, and Landry's a guy as well. They haven't done this before. So to have between that and the fact that everybody loves Quinn, and the fact that he's proven. I mean, he's not a title winning coach. I get that. He's not Eric Spoelstra. He doesn't have that resume, but like he's been very good. I think everyone kind of agrees he's a really good coach, and also a guy who I think is going to have some juice. So to kind of take a little bit of heat off the front office that needs the heat off of them too, because this is their first time doing this. And I'm not saying that. I feel like I'm saying it a lot recently. It's not a negative. It's just that it's an unknown. It's a question mark. It's not a minus. It's a question mark. We just don't know. And then you throw in Tony, and Tony's no matter what he says in interviews, Tony's very active. Tony likes to do things and get involved. So having Quinn as a guy who they've paid a lot of money to, who has experience, and I am confident is going to say what he thinks and what he wants to say. I'm not actually a huge coach has juice in the front office guy. I don't usually like that. I think in this situation, it's a better than usual situation for that because he is the most experienced person about basketball.
I think it's better, honestly, because since they invested so much in Quinn, they're all going to be forced to be on one plan. They're all going to be
it's kind of the Quinn plan, though. Yeah, it's kind of the Quinn plan. But you're right.
To me, honestly, that's fine because the last 2 years that has not been the case. And
they've never had. I mean, I guess you could say maybe the first couple years of Travis and Lloyd, because Travis hired Lloyd, they were obviously on the same page. They were largely on the same page about the way basketball should be played and like what players we want to value. Nate did not align with Travis, generally speaking. I'm talking about not personality. I'm talking about basketball like values. Nate's a very old school guy. Travis is really not. Travis is more of I make fun of it, the dribble, pass, and shoot thing, whereas Nate was much more traditional, much more mid-range heavy, all those things. And then you throw it, and then you had Nate and this new front office for a couple months. They move on, and now it might be Quinn ball, but I agree with you. Like Quinn it's almost like usually you go the other way, like your GM or your president of basketball operations hires your coach. I kind of don't think that Landry and Kyle were like hiring Quinn. I think it was like Quinn's the guy we can get, and Quinn is. I know that Landry said they had Quinn, they had Kyle call Quinn, and they should have. They have a good relationship because Quinn coached Kyle.
Tony hired Quinn.
That's what I'm getting to. I'm pretty sure, and you could be more definitive than I can. I'm trying to be reporter like. I'm pretty sure that was. Yeah, I'm right. I'm pretty sure that was not necessarily an edict from Tony, but like, hey, we're going to pay him what it takes to get him. That negotiation happened very fast. They hired him very quickly in the middle of the season, and I think that was like, hey, that's a big name. Let's get him. It worked out well. But like, Quinn is older and more experienced than his boss, like by a lot. So that situation is just interesting and how to go back and forth. So yeah, I mean, they could be in a coaching search right now. Like that could be happening. It's early May. Like, can you imagine a world where I'm covering like the interview process of like James Borrego's coming in to interview? You know what I mean? Like that could be. Yeah. It would have been helpful for content. Honestly, it would have been a great content cycle for me. I've been doing a lot of podcasts, but like that's the kind of thing that didn't happen because they moved so quickly. And it's not easy that they did that, but it got a lot of the growing pains away that would have maybe been happening now. And even if they were to hire Quinn now, and maybe they had a very similar end of the season, like maybe they lose in the play-in or they lose in the first round by whatever, the same amount of thing. But now you have to even if they hire Quinn, he doesn't have the experience. He doesn't have the reps with these guys or the pull with these guys. And now he's fresh. And yeah, you have training camp, but like the fact that he now knows all these players that, no matter who's going to be back, like he and Trey can work together all summer long from right now. They probably already are texting and whatever else is going on. DeJounte, all those guys. So like, I don't want to overstate it, but it does give, I think it should, this is my opinion now, for fans, you should have a pretty good comfort level with your coach. And, since, for me anyway, since Bud, you haven't had that. Now, I know people might, the first year of Nate got a lot of a lot of flowers, and I get it. But like, and Nate, I don't think Nate was terrible. I don't think Lloyd was always terrible. It is what it is. But like, since Bud, who was like a consensus top 10 coach, you haven't had that, like that kind of gravitas in that chair, for whatever reason you want to say. So that's a positive, especially when they're going to have some turnover. To have that stability that you kind of already know, it's pretty helpful.
Yeah, and like we said earlier, like Quinn getting off to a great start with Trey, like that is the thing. That is the thing, because Trey hears the smoke. Like he listens to everything. Unfortunately,
Trey. I'm about to say Trey probably is too online. Trey hears everything. So
yes, but like it's good for him. I mean, it's good that those two seem to have a really good relationship, and it's about basketball because Quinn can talk to the genius that is Trey Young. He can talk to him and give him help. Like it's hard to like it's really hard to coach elite talent. Like it's one of those things where like actually coach them, not manage them, but actually coach them and what they should be looking for on certain plays, or and not be like too heavy handed. Because like even Quinn on one of the, when Trey made the game winner on Game 5, he talked about how that's Trey's game. Like he's like, would I like him taking 33 footers all the time?
No.
No, but like at the same time, that sets, like he understands
your personnel.
Sets up his dribble drive game. That sets up everything for him. And so he's like, hey, if you feel confident in the shot, take it. I'll never tell you not to take a 3-pointer. If it was a pull up mid range 2 with a head in his face,
right?
I don't know.
Well, it's one of those things with Quinn. Like it gets boiled down too much to this, and it's not just this. But the 3-point shooting emphasis has been very clear. Guys joke about it. At exit interviews, guys were joking about it. Like it was like, well, we all know Quinn wants to take all these threes. Like they all know. I'm sure it's been pounded into their brains. But with Trey, like obviously you want to take a lot of shots. Anyway, have those guys on the same page is huge. And I thought it was notable that like even Trey, this is what stuck out to me. He said, I think it was actually interviews, maybe it was the last game of the year, one of those two. He got asked about Quinn, and he was like, basically from the first practice, he was like, Quinn showed us a couple things at the first practice, and guys were looking at each other like, all right. One of those things, like it's a little thing, but again, for that to be conveyed in the media, like they don't have to say that to us. Who are we? But for Trey to say that, like kind of like that nod of and look, Nate was an NBA point guard. It's not like Nate doesn't know things. Clearly he does. But there's a different thing there, and we'll see. All right, that's it for part 1 of the 2-part conversation with myself and Tyler. And right now, part 2 should be available in your podcast feed of your choosing. So if you're a new listener, thanks for coming on board for this first episode. But please subscribe to the podcast, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher. We're also on YouTube, and part 2 should be available right there. So go ahead and click on over to that one and enjoy part 2. So thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you all next time.